so much. It's great to be here. Great to be here with my old friend, Shigeru Ban, who I first met in the late 1980s. It wasn't long after that that I actually launched my writing career and began writing about Shigeru's work, and I'm extremely excited. I have a visual aid. One of the first articles, I think it was the first article about Shigeru that appeared in the New York Times, that was written by me, and it's about the paper log house and the paper church. So Shigeru, let's talk about that project. How did it come to be, the paper log house and the paper church?
My thesis was rejected by Peter Eisenman, and so I had to do again. So I couldn't graduate in 1984 with my friend and also my partner John Dean. Yeah. So I had a hard time with Peter. He said, your name is too complicated to remember. Instead of Shigeru Ban, he called me Sugar Bear. So that's how you can understand I had a hard time with him. But he became a very remarkable professor for me. Anyway, and then I went back to Tokyo, and by accidentally I started my own practice without any experience. So first thing I did is exhibition for my favorite architect Alvar Aalto from Finland. And for the temporary exhibition, I didn't have enough budget to use wood like Alvar Aalto did. And I found a paper tube, which was all over my studio. Still we are using rolled paper for the fax, and also tracing paper, always paper tube remain. Because I hate throw things away, I kept them. So I started using this paper tube replace the wood. Then I found out this material is so strong, I started testing to use for the building structure in 85, 86, before people talking about ecology, recycle, sustainability, so on. Then I built my own weekend house in paper, and the first building in the world with the permission of the government as a permanent building. It's still there. Then after I spent 10 years, I recognized that the architects, we are not working for society. We are mainly working for privileged people who has power and money. Because power and money is invisible, they hire us to make a monument to show their power to the public. And I'm not saying, I like to have some monumental project too. But I thought I wanted to use my knowledge and experience not only for privilege, but also general public, even people who lost their houses by natural disaster. Especially I recognize that after the big earthquake never kill people, but the collapse of a building kill people. That's our responsibility as architect. But we are waiting for a new project coming after the big disaster because we have to rebuild the city. But before city are rebuilt, the people suffering with very poor evacuation facilities and temporary housing. And I thought that's our responsibility to improve those kind of living conditions. So that is why I started working disaster. And the first one was 1994 in Rwanda after genocide. They are living with very poor plastic shelter with the locally cut trees. And over 2 million people became refugees. And, but also this became a deforestation because they had to cut all the forests to make a shelter. But this was guided by United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. But I thought that this is not really right to destroy the forest to make a shelter. So I proposed a shelter made of paper tube, which you can see at the middle of the table. Because being expensive, we can find these tubes anywhere in the world. Even Rwanda, in Kigali, they have a paper tube factory. So I proposed this to United Nations, and they accepted to develop this idea further. That's why I have started making shelter out of this material. 1994, then year after 1995, big earthquake in Kobe in Japan. So where I built the paper church and paper logos, which you just see there. So with my student. So that's how I started.
Well, I remember we went down and looked at the paper log house and the paper church. And it was quite an interesting story about, well, the community that you were serving and how you chose to build there and what you chose to build there and your interactions with not just the individuals but also the people running the church. Maybe you could share that story with everyone. You wanted to build the church.
Yeah, first I went to there because they are just having mornings. All the building of the church was destroyed by earthquake and fire. So they are having morning service outside around the fire. So I wanted to provide them some temporary roof or shelter for the church. And I proposed to the priest, why don't we build temporary church out of paper tube structure, which we can build by ourselves. But he didn't believe me. He thought I'm crazy proposing making building out of paper after the big fire. But I didn't give up. So I started commuting to the Kobe from Tokyo. Then I met the Vietnamese refugees. They are having a hard time living in tent. So that's why I built a paper log house for them with my student.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the priest say you have to build the houses first before you can build a church?
Yeah, actually, because priest, actually he was not mean. He was very right. He said, I'm not going to rebuild the church unless the city recovered or deconstructed. He didn't want to make he didn't want to think of a community that the church is very rich to remake the church immediately after the big disaster. But instead, he had some certain budget to provide the temporary house for the Vietnamese refugees because they commute to this church. So he allowed me to make the temporary house for them, not the church.
Right. And after you built the
yeah,
house,
because because of building this temporary house for Vietnamese refugees was very successful. So he allowed me to build the temporary church as long as I get the donations and student volunteer student to build by ourselves. So that's how we started.
And how many houses did you build?
With 50 of them.
50?
Yeah, 50.
And were they for individual families?
Individual families, and they were living there for 4 years.
Okay. And what materials did you use aside from paper tubes?
The one you see there.
Same materials?
Exactly the same.
Even the beer crates?
Yeah, beer crates.
Yeah.
But in Japan there are two major companies called Kirin and Asahi.
Yes.
And Asahi make a beer crate red, which doesn't go with color of paper tube. So I asked a Kirin company to donate. And we are very disappointed, still remember that we are expecting beer inside the beer crates. But it was totally empty. So we still remember we are very disappointed. But the Kirin company donated the crates, yeah.
Well, as you just said a moment ago, you said you hate to throw things away. So what happened to the church?
Actually, it was there for 10 years. It became kind of a symbol of reconstruction of the Kobe city. And they decided to rebuild something bigger. I was very lucky to design. But also there was a big earthquake in Taiwan. So we decided to disassemble the church, send over to Taiwan, a village called Puiri, to reassemble as a permanent church and community center. It's still there after 30 years. So it's become permanent.
Do they have to do anything to maintain it?
Well, I suggest them to repaint the polyurethane every year, but they're so lazy, they have not done anything, but it's still okay.
So scrolling ahead, you were on your way up to Harvard with Dean. You stop at the glass house, and suddenly this idea comes to the surface about building a paper log house here. How did that come about? What were your thoughts about that?
Well, anyway, that was what Dean brought this interesting chance. And actually, this glass house is one of my most favorite building out of Philip Johnson.
What do you like about it?
Because I love Philip, Miss van der Rohe, especially his Fanzo's house. And when I was a student, I analyzed two buildings, Philip Johnson's glass house and the Miss van der Rohe glass house. It's so brilliant that Philip Johnson analyzed Fanzo's house very carefully to do everything opposite. No, this house is like a box with painted black frames. But as you know, the Fanzo's house is just the two horizontal plane, floor and the roof, and there is in-between spaces. So everything is totally opposite. It's very carefully designed. So this was one of my favorite houses. So that was kind of a dream to come true, to put the paper house next to the glass house.
Was it your decision to use the paper log house? I mean, you've built a lot of other structures out of paper tubes.
Yeah, but it's such a wonderful contrast to build the paper house next to glass house.
But you could have built a facsimile of your house, the one in Yamanaka-ko, or some other paper tube house. How did you choose the paper log house?
Because this is one of the most important work of mine, which made me continue working in disaster area. So after this project, I knew this is my life work, continue working in the disaster after I did this work. So this is very important work for myself.
So what disaster relief work are you engaged in now?
There are a few. In Japan, there is a big earthquake it's called the Noto Peninsula near Kanazawa, January 1st. I'm making the temporary houses which can be used as a permanent houses, and also they have very famous Wajima, the lacquer artist. We are building a temporary studio for them. So we are working there. Also that we are working in Ukraine. After immediately after, week after February 24th, 2022, I saw that there's so much, like 5 million refugees from Ukraine to Poland, and they are staying in a gymnasium without any privacy. It was just a situation like Japan after the earthquake. People stay in gymnasium without any privacy because the government doesn't care. But I think privacy is very important, basic human right. So I collaborate with my friend in Poland to provide them paper partition system to give the privacy to each families week after the refugees start moving with local student. And then I prepared with a Polish student to make affordable housing. Then I met the mayor of the city of Lviv. It's the west side of the country. He asked me to design the hospital of the 7-story hospital in timber, locally available laminated timber. It's used to export to Canada and US, but now they cannot. So he wanted to make because it's the west side of the country, many injured people come to this hospital, so that's overcapacity. And so that he decided to make a hospital, but he wanted to use local material, like timber. However, according to the Ukrainian building regulation, they cannot make such a public building of that scale in timber. However, using as you know, the Ukraine want to be part of the EU. According to EU building regulation, we can make such a building in timber. So mayor decided to make this hospital in timber, applying the European building regulation. He asked me to do this. So this is a very important project using local material and using the EU building regulation. It's under design. The construction will start next spring. So that is the most current project that I'm working on.
And so when will that finish?
Well, construction will take maybe the 18 months or so from next spring, but they don't have enough money yet.
Okay.
So I'm hoping they get enough money donated from other nations.
So when you're not working at disaster relief sites, you're working on other projects, among them many things in the United States. Do you have a favorite building that you've done in the United States?
Well, I must say all the building is my favorite, but the Aspen Art Museum is something I like very much.
What did you find particularly gratifying about
Well,
that
because
building?
I had a hard time, I designed twice.
Oh,
It's incredible that I designed the first building for first site, but the community didn't want to sell this land to the museum, so they bought it and they rejected. I didn't understand why community reject to build the art museum next to the jail, actually. Then they look for another site, end of the downtown, so I had to redesign. But they have such a wonderful board members to support me. So we spent 5-6 years to finish designing, because we had to design two, and the community has to say yes for this. But the museum director, Heidi, and board member, everything was very, very supportive. So it was a difficult project, but as the end, it was very successful.
what are the main materials? It doesn't have.
Well,
paper tubes,
it's
does it?
concrete, and also the wooden screens,
Right.
and the timber structure. But the actually site was too small for what they want. That's why there's no lobby, foyer space on the ground floor. So I made a nice cafe and a rooftop terrace, so that people have to take a semi-outdoor stair or elevator to go up to the top of the building before they go into the galleries. Then enjoy the beautiful view of the mountain. Then come down little by little. That's I got the idea because as you know, the Aspen is very famous for skiing.
Yes.
When you ski, you take a lift to go up to the top of the mountain and enjoy the mountain view and come down. So I took the same process of the experiencing art and museum,
great.
just like a skiing.
Can you tell us anything about projects you're working on now in the United States?
We are designing a condominium in Miami. It's very good. Normally, we have a hard time to work with the developer, but they are very good developers because they really love my work. So each time when I present something, they say, "Oh, this is something similar to your project here." And there. They know so much more about my project, so that's why I can get along with this developer. Otherwise, sometimes developer use the building as a product to sell, but this developer really loves my previous building, so that's why we can get along with each other very well.
And so is that in design now, or is that?
Yes, we finished the concept design. We are doing the design development, and we started also interior designs.
Mm-hmm. And
I was also working for other project in Kentucky.
oh, tell us about that.
It's a bourbon distillery in Kentucky. Yes. Actually, there is a bourbon in the pavilion. That is a bourbon they are producing.
White Owl. Is that what it's,
Huh? Kentucky Old.
Oh, and what is the shape of that building? As I recall, it's kind of interesting.
It's a 3 pyramid,
Mm-hmm.
and also the other pavilions, because the site is so big. Used to be the mining site of the stones, so it's became now a lake.
Mm-hmm.
So we are building pavilion around this lake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How did you decide on pyramids?
Well, they like to have something very symbolic. Actually, this was competition. Also, I'm designing the visitor center. This come from you remember that they had a big, not hurricane, the tornado problem in Mayfield, Kentucky.
Right, right.
So I went to there that the city was totally destroyed by tornado, and I met the mayor. We decided to make a temporary church which worked for the community center in Mayfield. And my client of the Kentucky all supported this project. So we designed free of charge for them to be used, same design for the visitor center for this distillery.
Well, we're all waiting for that. That'll be a great project. So, you know, I'm very interested in houses, and I just published this book about houses, and I'm sure everyone in this room is wondering, what is your house like? Tell us about your house.
My weekend house?
Where
Or the normal house I designed?
Well, you don't go to the weekend house, do you?
No, it's not used. It's empty.
So maybe the house where you know, are normally when you stay in Tokyo.
I designed apartment,
Mm-hmm.
so I stay in the apartment I designed in the forest.
And it has a hole in the middle, right?
Yeah, because it's forest, I didn't want to cut any trees. So in this apartment, there's many holes where the big trees were to let them grow. So we are actually the forest is very good because in the summer the leaves cover the roof to make a shading, and in the winter it's gone so that it gets direct sun. So that the left this forest works very well for saving energy.
I mean, that building was built, what, 20 years ago? 25 years ago?
1995.
Uh-huh. And so the trees have, sounds like they've flourished, they've done well.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
That's great. Well, thank you. I think that now we have time for some questions, right?
Yes.
How do you think your Japanese culture or being around Japan has affected your personal style with architecture?
Well, first of all, after I finished high school in Japan, I came to the United States to study architecture. So that I never studied Japanese architecture. So I never referred to traditional Japanese architecture. Also, before I came to New York, I spent 3 years in Southern California to study at the Southern California Institute of Architecture. And by chance, I visited and I loved the so-called case study houses designed by Shigeru Ban, Charles Eames in 70s. And I found out that those case study house has big Japanese influence because the house totally flexible and connected inside outside using very humble materials. So that somehow I was very much influenced by those case study houses. My earlier period of my house I also called case study houses, which was so much influenced by case study houses in California. But otherwise, I don't refer to my design to the Japanese culture. Besides maybe because of blood, I'm indirectly influenced, but I don't want to refer to the tradition purposely.
I have to jump in here for a second because as an observer of Shigeru's work for a long time, I completely support what he is saying about his intentions, but there are certain things in his architecture we see repeatedly. And I will tell you, Shigeru has a love of architecture with moving parts. Doors, windows, entire facades, rooms, and that's a very traditional idea, but born anew through Shigeru's architecture.
What is your favorite Japanese architect working now? And what is your favorite Western, non-Japanese architect working now?
I don't have any favorite architect living now.
Not living?
Huh?
Not living?
Well, I used to love Kenzo Tange, but now as architect I get older. To see that his life as architect, I don't respect him anymore, because he's such a wonderful designer to design something influenced by fashionable style of time. In the beginning, he designed something like Le Corbusier. Then he designed the concrete building using Japanese traditional timber structure like design. And then he worked with a genius engineer who proposed him to make a tension structure to design Olympic swimming pool and other cathedrals. And then in the end, he did the postmodern Japanese style. So he always influenced by fashionable time with the errors. And so as an architect's life, I don't respect the architect who is always fashionable design. Also, he's such a genius designer, architect. I prefer the architect who just created their own style, like a Fry Otto. He created his own building style, building structure, materials. That is why I collaborated with Fry Otto for Japanese Pavilion Hanover Expo to learn a lot from him. So now I like to create my own style without being influenced by fashionable style at the time. And also I use a lot of natural material. Now people love to use the timber because of environmental issues. But I started using the natural material, humble material in the 80s, before people start talking about the ecological environmental issues. So that I'm hoping not to be influenced by fashionable style. That's why I used to love Tange, but no more. So now the way to see the architects who I can respect is different because I'm getting older as an architect.
You use computer, do you draw?
I draw by hand, everything, even detail and structure. And thank you. The drafting by computer is directly connected to your brain. Drafting by hand is directly connected to your heart. So still I draw everything by hand.
When I read about you, I heard about your mother being in the world of fashion and how you traveled you traveled around the world with her and
No, not with her.
or you were inspired by
Yes.
her. And what touched me was also when you won the Premium Imperiale for the announcement. You talked about Issey Miyake and your admiration for him and how he revolutionized materials. And I wonder how maybe fashion, and I think you obviously revolutionized materials in architecture, and what other influence contributed to your vision and where you see it involved in the future.
Let me first tell you that why I was so happy to receive this award, because the three most people I respect in the world received this award in the past. Issey Miyake, fashion designer, Seiji Ozawa, conductor, and Fry Otto, whom I just mentioned, the German architects. As she mentioned, I respect the Issey Miyake because he's not just a stylist. He, as you know, some people wear the Pritzker. He makes a new fabric or new way of making fabric. So he's not just designing a shape, but he started inventing the material to make appropriate form from particular material he invented. That's what I mentioned. Instead of just being influenced by fashionable style, even fashion design, there are many fashionable styles, but he was not influenced by fashionable style. He invented the material to create his own style. So I feel the same way for my architecture. And the Seiji Ozawa, as you know, he's such a charming person and so humble to everyone. I think that humbleness is most important for my life. So that working in disaster area is really always, it's my own training to keep myself very humble. And the Fry Otto is, as I said, the same thing. It's very, very innovative for the material. he said that using minimum material, minimum energy to create maximum space. So which I really believe and respect. So that is why I'm so happy to receive this award because they received this award in the past.